Mike, welcome back to Girls Only.
Yeah. How long was it?
Like a year, maybe 2 years?
Yeah.
You were one of our very first meetings.
How long is this gone for?
Like 2 years.
2 years, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, it's not in my books.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
So, creators,
Okay.
completely new series. Last time you were here, we talked about Birth, which is the first book of Novo.
Mm-hmm.
And you've wrapped that all up now. Story's completely over.
Mm-hmm.
And you've decided to start again with creators.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with that?
I had, this kind of, I've worked on Novo and that whole thing forever. And the only other book I had done was Adam Wreck, which was the kids' book. And I had actually gotten through half of the next one, and I just wasn't loving doing it. I loved doing the first one, this kind of light, airy thing. It did fine, but it wasn't something I was really into. So I spent a long time working on this other book, and I still think it's okay. It's pretty good, but it's not. And I just had this section in my email where every time I had a little idea, they'd send it my way. But I'd always, my favorite things ever were when I was a kid with Harold and the Purple Crayon. Anybody ever watch Pinwheel? Pinwheel was this Nickelodeon show at the beginning of Nickelodeon, and they had this little cartoon called Simon. Hello, my name is Simon. You can probably YouTube it. It's about a kid who would jump over this fence and he would just draw, and things would come to life. And there was this whole society. And where the wild things are, the kid brings imagination to life. And I just spend so much of my time talking to other people about their creations and how they're such a part of our lives. And I just kind of had this little click of well, what if creations actually could come to life? How would they work? What would be the science behind it? What would be the ramifications? How would it manifest itself? What would the conflicts be? And it was huge, and I sat on the idea and brought it up to people when they were asking what I was doing next every once in a while. And it was super intimidating. And then a really, really good friend of mine, who I respect a lot creatively, he was like, well, what are you going to do next? And I kind of went through a couple things, and then I started talking about that and got really into it. And he's like, done, shut the hell up, do that. And I had also been toying around with the idea of doing a Kickstarter for a long time, but didn't know what I wanted to do for it. So I started doing character sketches for this. I got a general idea of where I wanted the story to go. I wrote that and started drawing it. I got about a third of the way through, and when I started putting the Kickstarter together, and then the Kickstarter actually, weirdly enough, went live the day that my wife went into labor.
A busy day.
It was a very, very busy day, and that would have gotten forgotten about that day, except for the fact that my wife, every few contractions, she'd be like, how's the Kickstarter going? And I'm like, should I? Yeah. And I would check, and it reached its goal in 10 minutes. But the original goal was super small. What I really wanted to do was make something that I could just use as a pitch. I was just going to make 100 copies of it so I could, hand them out and send it off. And so I just asked for $300. And then I hit 1,000 before the end of the night, and wasn't really thinking about what I was going to do with it or anything, but eventually it hit about 5,500, which you don't get all of that, but you get a nice chunk of it. And so I did the whole a pilot episode for it, and then and the whole point was that I was going to do this and push it. I'm going to pitch it to some larger companies. I love my publisher, but I'm kind of like the guy I did Novo with, but he can't afford to pay for print runs anymore, and I kind of am feeling like this is maybe the time for me to push forward a bit and try to move on and find something a little bit more substantial. So now I'm in the process of writing, doing the whole thing. So this was part 1 of 12 of the first story arc, which if that was it. That could be one story, but it's essentially like I wanted to do something where I could do like almost like a British TV series as a comic, like a 13 episode, and I felt like this felt so much like an episode of something that led into.
So you've already scripted the ending and everything?
I've plotted the entire 12 issues.
Okay.
I've scripted the second one.
Okay.
I'm halfway through drawing the second one. I'm getting back into my groove. My day job changed a lot this year. Having a daughter really did a lot. So, and I'm just trying to get through enough of it and then start pitching it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But anyway, thank you guys for picking this. This is like my new like obsession that I'm working on right now, and I'm really having fun. And the fact that it's appreciated is really cool.
So, it's all purpley. Did you do that? Like, I'm guessing that's a stylistic sort of thing.
I wanted to do it. My strength is not in my color, and I wanted to do something that felt intentional, that I was comfortable with, that would just look great and really push the idea of this. So what I really wanted it to be was a black and white book where the only things that showed color were just like little pops. And it's really hard, and I didn't want the gray tones or anything to just be gray. I didn't want it to just feel like the black. So it's actually a full color book.
Yeah.
One of the real hard things about getting your work into digital stuff without feeling digital is that if you scan a black and white drawing, it's really easy to take a black and white drawing and make it look good. If you scan watercolor, it's really easy to take watercolor and make it look good. If you scan a black and white drawing with watercolor on it, you can either make the black and white look good, or you can make the watercolor look good. So what I ended up doing was I would take Payne's Gray, and I would just do different values of washes, just big values, like by this, I did a few dozen of them. And I scanned them in. And then the rest of it is just, more typical for me.
Yeah.
So I'd scan them in separately, and then I would mask all that in. And then the only real digital color is just the pops. And the purple is supposed to be the power.
Right.
I showed the blood.
Right.
And I'm finding other places to use like little pops of color. I'm also, once it gets into, because there's a lot of characters in this, and I'm trying to streamline it so it's fun to read about a lot of different characters in the same way it's fun to follow different characters in a TV show.
Yeah.
Where a lot of times in comics you feel like you're just reading a lot of backstory, and I feel like because of the format of comics and the way that they're treated, too many characters is no fun to follow. And I'm really like, there's no one main character. Right now there is the Maya character is that initial main. Well, her and her pet unicorn are become the main characters for a little bit. But there's Mr. Hugs is a main character, which is the teddy bear robot and her creator. And there's another boy. There is, of course, the Morgan Attain, who is kind of like sort of the villain of the whole thing, which isn't, I don't really let on, but it's not so subtle that has some kind of nefarious thing going on. Her whole history, there's a story within a story in this, in that, I'm starting 12 years after it's already begun, like this epidemic, to answer it, what I really wanted to do was keep the color really simple to make it just work for the book and not just make a color book, which isn't my strength. So.
Okay, because I know with Birth and Novo, it was mainly black and white.
That was a lot of comfort level.
Yeah.
I mean, it was affordability. It was. I was just starting out, and I had no way of doing color. And then with this, when I could, that door opening up, I wanted to do it right.
Yeah.
When I did Birth, I wanted to do it right.
Yeah.
And with this, I just wanted it to look good. I just wanted it to feel right, and not just. Yeah. Because it would look like a giant. It would look like a rainbow threw up on it. Red, yellow, blue. It's not my strength.
So it starts out, you do the sketch in the book, and then you scan it in, and then you add.
Yeah, it's a big drawing in the book, And then what I do is with these horrible 3 values of fuchsia, I do the all the value on different layers, and then I use that as a mask so that when I scan the washes in and put it on, the horrible fuchsia is able to, for just like markers for that, and then I just erase out everything else, make the layer transparent, and then it becomes like the watercolor that it is.
Yeah.
So it's the digital, non-digital way to do watercolor.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, my favorite creation is Battle Tusks.
That's everybody's.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
he's adorable, and I want one. But did you have a particular favorite character design? Because last time you were here and you showed us your sketchbook, you go kind of crazy with your character designs.
Yeah, I have a lot of fun with it, and this is crazy because there's this aspect of the creations that, like, if it doesn't, like, if they're not just right, they are terrible. And there's 4 major creations in the book. There's Battle Tusk. Well, there's actually only 3, but there's Battle Tusk, there's Carden, which is the name of the unicorn, and there's Ramin, who is Morgan's creation. And then, of course, there's Mr. Hugs, who's just mentioned, but he's actually a very major character later on. And the alligator one was kind of just for the sake of plot. And of all of those, I think the alligator one is dumb. It's just, it was there for the sake of plot, and it doesn't have that, like, connection. All the other 4 have this kind of, like, voice to them that speaks to their character because they're all specific.
You're talking this one that just shows up in the...
Right. And now he was more about the location. So it happens in Florida, and so I thought it would be really cool about to have that kind of like the gator, but it just doesn't like speak to any kind of character. I know like Mr. Hugs for me is my favorite because the story behind him I really latched onto. But also, I mean, so for me, all of these are like so grounded in their characters' backstories. So instead of having to tell a character's backstory immediately, you meet their creation, and you know something happens. And you figure that out because the way Carden is born. Carden is born for her need for a nurturer, and I did the first half of the next one drawn, and I'll let you guys like go through it. Kind of get like a sneak peek at the beginning of the next one. I will say there is one part that because there's no color, it makes no sense. It's a traffic light, and you can't tell. You're like, why are they looking at the traffic light and taking this information from it? It's just that it's, like I loved the Battle Tusk. That first image that I did for the Kickstarter, which is just it and the little kid underneath him. I teach middle school and. Like seeing these kids who get bullied, and it's not really that big of a problem at the school I'm at, but it's a problem everywhere. And I was horribly bullied in school. Middle school was just awful. I hated it, and I thought of Battle Tusk as like the creation of a kid who wanted to be a nice kid, but just wanted to do one bad thing, and wanted to do it epically. And not hurt anybody. And with this, one of the things is like these kids get the most horrible wishes come true. And so like the idea, and so the original thing was just going to be the story of that kid, that like 14-page segment of the kid just screw the teachers, screw this place, and I had written out a whole backstory, which I kept like, you don't need that, you get it, like just a kid who was angry, who was dorky, and just was miserable, and just made his ultimate pet, who just shoved a flagpole through the top of the school, made his mark, and in the story it's that little moment of like, all right, but we're good, and then things go horribly wrong, and it also shows like it was also like, I think for me that scene of what they were like willing to do just to like just get this over with was, a lot of fun for me to write. But to answer my favorite, it's totally the Mr. Hugs character. Mr. Hugs is the creation of a girl named Roxy, who's a little bit older than the Maya character, and when they go to the school, they meet. And the story, if I ever get to do a second graphic novel, it'll start with the backstory of Mr. Hugs and Roxy. Roxy was the daughter of a high-powered lawyer, Manhattan lawyer, who was horribly physically and sexually abusive to her and her mom. And he just watched this guy beat her mom, and would beat her. And her favorite toy is this little teddy bear. And eventually the dad gets so mad that, and once he starts taking on her, he rips apart her teddy bear, which was like the thing that she spoke to and like told all these things to. She couldn't tell people at school. She couldn't, this guy's so super high powered. Couldn't talk to her mom because her mom was more scared than she was. So when she gets a little bit older and the power starts to kind of come up in her, she starts drawing. And she kept the head of the teddy bear. She would draw it and do turn in all these things. And finally the power comes and it makes this tiny little robot teddy bear who becomes an actual manifestation, like a physical living manifestation of that bear that she can tell all of her secrets to. And so every time her father does something to her, it sees it. She talks about it. It's horrible. And then one day it's just effing had enough and it just erupts and inadvertently takes out like the entire building just trying to protect her from the father. And, it was, the design was so grounded in the character. And Battletosk was so grounded in the character. I want a effing elephant with two tusks that are axes! And, just like, I just picture this kid like, I don't care about it, like pointing at his sketchbook, like, this is awesome, keep drawing! And with her, I just picture this kind of rebellious girl doing something a little bit masculine, like not an ultra feminine girl, just taking this very sweet, innocent thing that she's loved forever and adding in this like rebellious, like screw the world aspect to it into it. And so and Carden, so all of them really I do feel very connected with, but for very different reasons. But yeah, Battletosk, I know that everybody is like so, and he's gone, which I think was kind of a fun aspect, is that character was like, I think really driving to the concept of the book, but he was a heartfelt plot fixture. Yeah.
So I'm guessing you sketched a lot when you were younger, in like middle school and high school and that sort of thing.
Yeah, when I was in middle school, I got in trouble because all my teachers would complain that I wasn't doing very well, and they thought it was because I was doing fine. I was like a C, B student, and they thought it was because I was drawing too much. So I would draw just straight through every class, and I wasn't allowed to draw anymore. And then my grades dropped to D's, and they realized that the drawing was actually making it so I wouldn't daydream. Mm-hmm. Like I would focus that, and once I get my idea, I would just do this, and I'd hear everything, and I just happened to be like a B student. And it carries through even to today when I go to meetings at my job. I'm just constantly drawing and doodling, or even just like working on pages. At a certain point, and in a good way, it becomes kind of mindless, and so it helps me to pay attention to things around me. I'm sure you're kind of the same way. Yeah.
So out of all of the doodles in middle school and all that sort of thing, can you think back to any that you would want to see? If you had the powers of your creators, anyone that you would want to see come to life?
Hell no.
No, not at all?
I was so uncreative as a child.
Really?
It was just, and one of the rules,
because your artwork is just like crazy.
I think I didn't have it then. I really was like into other people's ideas. I don't even think I really was able to do good original like anything until I think it was like junior or senior year of college when I really found like some sort of a voice. And actually, one of the mechanics of the book that comes up later is the fact that kids, like, it's their creations that come to life. It has nothing to do with, like, if a kid has this power and draws a Pokemon, nothing will happen. It has no connection to them. Like, even if they love that show more than anything in the world, there's no connection there. And that was me. I would never have been one of the people to have this power as a kid as much as I drew, because I was copying everything. I drew every Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles I possibly could. But as a teacher, I know the kids I have that would be these kids,
Yeah.
you know, and that's really fun for me because I think a lot of it comes from these kids. Although, other than the bully, like I don't, know too many stories of abused kids that I'm like connected with the kid. But I just knowing what kids deal with on a general basis and being able to like kind of push that out and do like more extreme versions of the characters. But yeah, no, I totally just drew Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was basically just like the kids that I like get so frustrated with because all they do are copy Pokemon, and that's what they feel like makes them good artists. Like everybody gives them compliments because they know how to copy a Pokemon.
Yeah.
Anybody can do that, but to learn how to master the figure and master all these things and then use it to create your own ideas or reinvent things that have already happened, that doesn't happen very often. And I picture that the kids who are actually able to do that at that age, even if they're not drawing things amazingly, those are the kids that would be these kids,
Yeah.
So.
Cool. So when you started out doing birth and all that sort of thing, you had just you'd kind of come to a decision of what you wanted to do, and your wife you had just gotten married and all that sort of thing. Now with creators, you said as soon as you started the Kickstarter, your wife went into labor with your daughter Amelia.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it trying to write a book with a newborn in the house?
My wife has always been such an amazing supporter. We're both creative people. She's a potter. Mm-hmm. She runs her own business. I run my own business. And one of the things that was really important to me before I became a dad was that I wanted what I loved. I wanted to find a way to make the thing I love to do be imperative to the household. It was so important to me that by the time I had to make the decision of what I had to cut out of my life and what I had to keep to be in my life to be a dad, that me doing the thing that I loved was like, no, you need to do that. Like that, you're not paying bills if you're not doing that. And over the within, I'd say for the last 3 or 4 years, that's absolutely been the case. And it's, if I never, I guess I don't know how to say this, but like make it big or whatever, like I'm happy as I've found my happiness. Like I'm a dad. A husband and my wife and my little girl, we only want one kid, so it's like I've got my family. Mm-hmm. I am exceptionally happy with that. I really, really like my day job, and I really just am ecstatic that I get to, put like crazy things on clothes and write stories that I hopefully would want to read myself and, come up with things that feel true to me. Yeah. Now that said, when I did the Kickstarter, I was like talked into it, and I was like putting it off, and it was the best thing I ever did. So it's, I literally was like, we had gone to the hospital, and I was like, she had a little bit too much fluid, so we were going in weekly to get stress tests, where they just measure everything and sit with the heart rate monitor and stuff for an hour just to measure things, and. We were just there for the routine, and she had started having contractions, but nothing crazy. So they're like, "Yeah, it's probably not happening today." And so I'm like, "All right, hit go," because I'm just sitting there waiting for the hour while she's feeling contractions. Go. Literally within 5 minutes of that, they came in and are like, "You're probably going to be back a little bit later." So then we went up to the actual doctor's after we did the test, and she's like, "Yeah, you might be back tonight, but you might not be back for like a week." And Shauna's like, "Wow." So we go back to that, and you're not supposed to take warm baths when you're pregnant, but right at the end, they're like, "You should take a warm bath. That might kickstart this."
Was she like right at 9 months or?
Yeah, she was. It was the day before the due date.
Okay.
Or it was 2 days before the due date. But it was. So we went home. Drew a bath for her. She sat in the tub with the iPad next to her watching Buffy.
All right.
We watched all the Joss Whedon stuff for the second time the month before and just finished up like a month ago. like the entire Whedon universe. So the first, took us 7 months with the newborn. So she gets out of the tub, she sits down, and I was like, and one of the things that one of her little guilty pleasures happened to be rainbow sherbet. So I had this big tub of rainbow sherbet, and I come out with like just 2 spoons in the rainbow sherbet. And one of the misconceptions about pregnancy, does anybody have kids in the room? Okay, one of the misconceptions is that you get from movies is that the water breaks, and it's always this big dramatic thing that never happens. It's so rare when that happens. It usually breaks once you're in the hospital, and it's mostly like you're sitting there timing things and waiting to go. Well, her fucking water broke like it does in the movies. And I'm, like she's standing there like, and like knees together, and I'm just standing, because look, they've been prepping us for the fact that this never happens. I'm standing there with a bucket of sherbet, and we went to the hospital, and when everything went, I won't say awesome, because we did have some complications, but everything turned out awesome. And then I was so fortunate being a teacher that she was born June 20th, and so I had 2 months of like, I would wake up, Shauna had a C-section, so I had to like learn to be a dad real fast, because like I changed the first 200 diapers, and I did all these things that I was like really scared of, and so it was great, because I got to just spend an entire summer like, other than the breastfeeding thing, like having everything just split down the middle, and looking after my wife while she was recovering. And then once she recovered, she really I would get like 5 or 6 hours a day to just sit there and work on this, so it was. The fact that it did what it did, like the Kickstarter did what it did, and the way things lined up this summer, it really added a potency for me. Little like extra tidbit is when we finally got back from the hospital, 5 days later, there were sherbet stains on the chairs, on the walls. Like, the cats must have had a field day. Yeah, it's just everywhere. It was like, wow, green, orange, and purple everywhere.
Nice.